Tariq Al-Rashid stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Dubai penthouse, watching the city lights shimmer like scattered diamonds across the desert night. At 40 years old, he had everything the world deemed valuable: a business empire spanning 3 continents, properties in the world's most prestigious cities, and a name that commanded respect in international boardrooms. Yet the reflection staring back at him revealed what no amount of wealth could conceal: a man hollowed out by betrayal, going through the motions of living without truly feeling alive. His divorce from Layla had been finalized 6 months ago, ending a 15-year marriage that had crumbled under the weight of her infidelity with his former business partner. The scandal had been kept quiet, as his family's reputation demanded, but the wound remained raw. Tariq had thrown himself into work with renewed intensity, expanding his renewable energy ventures and philanthropic projects, but the emptiness followed him everywhere, to glamorous charity galas where he smiled for cameras, to board meetings where he made decisions affecting thousands of lives, to this very penthouse where silence pressed against him like a physical weight. His mother called weekly from Riyadh, gently suggesting it was time to consider remarriage, perhaps to a suitable woman from a good family who understood their world. But Tariq couldn't imagine opening his heart again, couldn't fathom trusting another person with the vulnerable parts of himself that Layla had so carelessly shattered. He had accepted that perhaps some people were meant to walk through life alone, building legacies instead of families, creating monuments instead of memories. What he didn't know, as he stood there contemplating his solitary future, was that his world was about to collide with someone completely unexpected. A young American woman with paint-stained hands and dreams bigger than the small Montana town she called home. Someone who would see past his wealth and walls to the man he'd forgotten he could be. Tariq's phone buzzed with a message from his executive assistant about tomorrow's flight to New York. Another series of meetings, another hotel suite, another city where he knew no one beyond business associates. He set the phone down and poured himself a glass of water. Doctor's orders after his recent health scare had forced him to cut back on alcohol. That had been another wake-up call. Chest pains at 39 that turned out to be stress-related but served as a stark reminder of his mortality. His physician had been blunt. "Your body is keeping score of all this pressure you're under. Money can't buy you a new heart, Tariq." The words had haunted him for weeks afterward. He had everything except the one thing that truly mattered: someone to share it all with, someone who cared about him rather than his bank account or social status. His friends from university had families now, children in college, marriages that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Meanwhile, Tariq attended their gatherings alone, the perpetual bachelor who arrived with expensive gifts and left early, unable to bear watching their comfortable intimacy. The next morning, Tariq's private jet carried him across continents and time zones. He worked throughout the flight, reviewing contracts and financial reports, his mind sharp despite the physical distance he was covering. His empire didn't sleep, and neither did he, not really. New York greeted him with gray skies and autumn wind that cut through even his custom-tailored suit. The meetings went smoothly. They always did when you had the power to walk away from any deal. By evening, he found himself at a charity auction at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, all of them eager to be seen supporting the arts while sipping champagne and networking. Tariq moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and making small talk, his public persona firmly in place. He barely noticed the artwork being auctioned until a particular piece caught his eye, a painting unlike the others, raw and honest, depicting a weathered barn against a vast Montana sky with such emotional depth that it stopped him mid-conversation. "That's by an emerging artist," a woman beside him commented. "Local girl from somewhere out west." The gallery took a chance on her. Tariq studied the painting more closely, drawn to something indefinable in the brushstrokes, a loneliness that echoed his own. Without thinking, he raised his paddle and entered the bidding. The amount quickly escalated beyond what any reasonable person would pay for an unknown artist's work. But Tariq didn't care. He needed that painting, needed its honest beauty in his sterile penthouse. When the gavel fell, declaring him the winner at $200,000, a ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. His assistant would think he'd lost his mind. Perhaps he had. As he filled out the paperwork for the purchase, he noticed the artist's name for the first time. Sophia Bennett, age 25, from a town called Meadowbrook, Montana. Something about that name, that age, that faraway place stirred something in his chest. The faintest flutter of curiosity, the first feeling beyond emptiness he'd experienced in months. 3 weeks later, the painting arrived at Tariq's Dubai residence, carefully crated and insured for an absurd amount. He had it hung in his study, the only room in the penthouse that felt remotely personal, where he spent late nights reviewing documents and making calls to different time zones. The painting transformed the space somehow, bringing a touch of raw authenticity to the modern minimalism. Tariq found himself staring at it during conference calls, his attention drifting to the way light played across that painted barn, the infinite sky above it. His mind kept returning to the artist, 25 years old, from a tiny Montana town most people couldn't find on a map. What drove someone so young, from such a remote place, to create something so profound? The question nagged at him with surprising persistence. He told himself it was simple curiosity, nothing more, but he found himself researching Meadowbrook, Montana on his laptop late one night, discovering it was a town of barely 3,000 people, surrounded by mountains and cattle ranches, a world away from everything he knew. His mother called from Riyadh, her voice warm but concerned as always. "Tariq, Habibi, your cousin Mariam is hosting a dinner party next month. She has a lovely friend visiting from London, a doctor, very accomplished, from an excellent family." Tariq closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of expectations. "Mama, I've told you." I know, she interrupted gently. "You need time. But it's been 6 months, my son. Your father, may Allah rest his soul, wouldn't want you living like this, alone in that glass tower of yours." They spoke for a few more minutes before Tariq promised to think about attending the dinner party, a promise they both knew was empty. After hanging up, his gaze returned to the Montana painting. On impulse, he asked his assistant to locate contact information for Sophia Bennett. "Sir, is there an issue with the painting?" his assistant asked, confused. "No," Tariq replied. "I want to commission another piece." The email came 2 days later, forwarded by the New York Gallery. Miss Bennett was honored by his interest, but currently had a 6-month waiting list for commissions, though she'd be happy to add him to it. The response was professional but brief, with none of the fawning gratitude he usually received when offering wealthy patronage. Intrigued, Tariq wrote back himself, bypassing his assistant. He explained that he'd like to discuss a significant commission, multiple pieces for his various properties, and would she be willing to schedule a video call to discuss his vision. He included his personal number, something he rarely shared. 3 days passed, with no response. Tariq checked his email more frequently than he cared to admit, telling himself this was simply about acquiring good art for his portfolio. When Sophia's reply finally arrived, it was apologetic but firm. She was in the middle of completing current commissions and needed to focus on her existing clients before taking on new work, regardless of the scale. She thanked him for his interest and suggested he contact her again in 7 months. Tariq read the email 3 times, astonished. No one said no to him. No one suggested he wait 7 months for anything, and somehow that refusal made him want to know her even more. Tariq's business took him to Los Angeles the following month, meetings with tech, startups he was considering for investment. California's endless sunshine felt artificial after Dubai's honest heat, everything gleaming and carefully curated. During a break between meetings, he found himself looking at a map, tracing the distance from Los Angeles to Montana. Meadowbrook was closer to Seattle, actually, nearly 1,400 miles north. A crazy thought formed in his mind. He had a free weekend before flying back to Dubai, and his pilot could get him anywhere in the, say, continental United States within hours. It was impulsive, possibly foolish, definitely out of character. But Tariq had built his fortune on calculated risks, and something told him this was one worth taking. He called his assistant. "Clear my schedule for the weekend. I'm making a detour to Montana." The silence on the other end spoke volumes about how unusual this request was, but his assistant knew better than to question him directly. "Of course, sir. Shall I arrange accommodation?" "In Billings or Missoula? Neither, Tariq said, still studying the map. A town called Meadowbrook. Find somewhere suitable. The private jet landed at a small regional airport where his arrival caused quite a stir among the handful of staff on duty. There was no luxury hotel in Meadowbrook, his assistant informed him apologetically. The best option was a bed and breakfast called the Rustling Pines, which had received decent reviews despite its modest 3 rooms. Tariq found himself smiling at the absurdity of it all. A man who owned penthouses on 3 continents, staying at a rural B&B. His security team wasn't thrilled with the arrangements, but Tariq overruled their concerns. The drive from the airport took an hour through landscape that was breathtaking in its stark beauty. Endless sky, rolling hills, mountains in the distance, everything touched with autumn gold. His driver, a local man hired for the weekend, kept stealing glances at him in the rearview mirror, clearly wondering what brought an Arab billionaire to Meadowbrook, Montana. Tariq wondered the same thing himself. What was he doing here? Chasing a painter he'd never met? Looking for something he couldn't name? Running away from his empty life in Dubai? Meadowbrook was exactly what he'd expected, and somehow more than that. A main street lined with brick buildings that probably hadn't changed much in 70 years. A diner with a neon sign advertising "Best Pie in Montana." A hardware store, a bank, a post office, pickup trucks angle parked in front of businesses. People on the sidewalk stopped and stared as his black SUV rolled past, their surprise evident. Tariq felt suddenly and profoundly out of place in his Tom Ford suit. This world so far removed from anything he'd known that it might as well have been another planet. The Rustling Pines B&B was a charming Victorian house, painted pale yellow with white trim, flower boxes still holding autumn blooms. Mrs. Henderson, the owner, was a woman in her 70s, with kind eyes and a direct manner. "Mr. Al-Rashid, welcome to Meadowbrook," she said, pronouncing his name carefully. "I have to admit, we don't get many international visitors. What brings you to our little town?" Tariq found himself telling the truth. A painting, and curiosity about the artist who created it. Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted to one of understanding and pleasure. "Oh, you must mean Sophia Bennett. What a talented girl. Her studio is just off Main Street, above the old pharmacy. Though I should warn you, she's a bit protective of her work time. Doesn't take kindly to interruptions." She said this with a fondness that suggested real affection for the young artist. Over tea in the B&B's cozy parlor, Mrs. Henderson filled in details about Meadowbrook's most promising creative talent. Sophia had grown up here, daughter of a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. The girl had shown artistic talent from childhood, winning every school art competition, earning a full scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design. Everyone thought she'd stay in the East, make it big in New York or Boston, but she'd come home after graduation, said she needed Montana's sky and space to create her best work. Some folks thought she was wasting her education, but her paintings were starting to sell in galleries across the country, and lately, international buyers were taking notice. That evening, Tariq walked through Meadowbrook's quiet streets, his security detail maintaining a discreet distance. The autumn air was crisp and clean, so different from Dubai's heat or New York's exhaust-filled winds. He found the old pharmacy building easily. It was impossible to miss in a town this small. Above the closed storefront, lights glowed in second-floor windows. Sophia's studio. Tariq stood across the street, feeling suddenly ridiculous. What was his plan? Exactly, knock on her door, announce that he'd flown halfway across the world because she'd politely declined his commission, that he couldn't stop thinking about her painting, about the loneliness in those brushstrokes that matched his own. A door opened beside the pharmacy's entrance, and a young woman emerged carrying 2 large canvases. Even from a distance, Tariq could see she was beautiful in an unself-conscious way. Long dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint-stained jeans, an oversized flannel shirt. She maneuvered the canvases toward a beat-up pickup truck parked at the curb, clearly struggling with their size. Without thinking, Tariq crossed the street. "Let me help you with those." Sophia looked up, startled, taking in his expensive clothes and foreign features with obvious surprise. "I've got it, "Thanks," she said, but one of the canvases was already slipping from her grip. Tariq caught it smoothly, steadying it against the truck bed. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd expected, with hazel eyes that held wariness and intelligence in equal measure. Paint smudged her cheek, and there was a small scar on her chin that somehow made her face more interesting. She studied him for a long moment, and he watched recognition dawn. "You're the guy who bought Montana Solitude at that New York auction," she said slowly. "The one who emailed about a commission." Tariq inclined his head, suddenly feeling uncharacteristically nervous. "Tariq Al-Rashid. And yes, I'm the one who can't take no for an answer, apparently." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, transforming her serious expression into something radiant. "You flew to Montana? That's either really dedicated or slightly concerning. I'm not sure which." Sophia secured the canvases in her truck bed, her movements efficient and practiced. "I'm delivering these to a gallery in Bozeman tomorrow," she explained, still eyeing him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Look, Mr. Al-Rashid, Tariq, please." "Tariq, then. I appreciate your interest in my work, I really do. But I meant what I said in my email. I have commitments to other clients, people who've been patient and supportive. I can't just bump them because someone with a bigger checkbook shows up." Tariq found himself respecting her integrity, even as it complicated his purpose here. "I understand. That's actually why I'm here, not to pressure you about the commission, but to apologize. I realize my persistence might have seemed like an attempt to use wealth to get what I want, and that wasn't my intention. Your painting moved me in a way art hasn't in years, and I wanted to tell you that in person." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "That's a long way to come, just to say you're sorry for being pushy." "Perhaps," Tariq admitted, "or perhaps I needed an excuse to see where that painting came from, to understand the place that created. Something so honest." The November wind picked up, and Sophia shivered in her thin flannel. "There's a diner down the street that makes decent coffee. If you're going to interrogate me about my artistic process, at least let me be warm while you do it." At Rita's diner, heads turned as they entered together, and Tariq could practically feel the gossip starting to percolate. In a town this size, a stranger was news. A foreign billionaire having coffee with local artist Sophia Bennett would be the talk of Meadowbrook by morning. They slid into a corner booth, and a waitress who looked to be in her 60s approached with coffee pot in hand. "Well, Sophia Bennett, who's your fancy friend?" "Just a client, Rita. This is Tariq." Rita poured coffee with a knowing look that suggested she wasn't buying the "just a client" explanation for a second. After she left, Sophia wrapped her hands around the warm mug and fixed Tariq with a direct gaze. "So, really, why are you here? And don't give me the line about appreciating art. Rich people buy art all the time without flying to Montana to meet the artist." Tariq added cream to his coffee, considering how to answer honestly without revealing how lost he'd been feeling, how her painting had touched something he'd thought was dead inside him. "I'm 40 years old, recently divorced, living a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels hollow on the inside. Your painting showed me I'm not the only one who understands loneliness that vast. I suppose I wanted to meet the person who could translate that feeling onto canvas." Sophia was quiet for a moment, studying him with those intelligent hazel eyes. "Montana Solitude," she said softly. "I painted that the winter after my mom died. I was 23, fresh out of art school, back in Meadowbrook, taking care of her during her final months. After she passed, I'd drive out to abandoned homesteads and paint, trying to make sense of feeling completely alone in the world, despite being surrounded by people who loved me." She paused. "That barn belongs to my friend's family. On clear nights, you can see 1,000,000 stars from that spot. It helps, somehow, to remember how small we are, how our pain is just one tiny piece of an infinite universe." Plotted emotional arc bridging age gap and cultural divides. They talked for 2 hours, long enough that Rita brought pie without being asked, setting it down with a wink. Tariq learned that Sophia had inherited her mother's small house on the edge of town, that she taught art classes to local kids twice a week at the community center, that she turned down gallery representation in New York because she couldn't imagine creating her best work anywhere but Montana. She asked him about Dubai, about his business, but seemed more interested in what he missed about his homeland than his net worth. The desert, he found himself saying. People think it's empty, but it's alive in ways you only notice if you're paying attention. The smell after rare rain, the way heat shimmers on sand, the silence that isn't really silence at all. Sophia smiled. Montana's like that too. People see it as flyover country, empty space between important places, but it's everything to those of us who understand it. By the time they left the diner, darkness had settled over Meadowbrook, and the temperature had dropped considerably. "Where are you staying?" Sophia asked as they stood on the sidewalk, their breath creating small clouds in the cold air. "The Rustling Pines B&B, Mrs. Henderson's place. She'll take good care of you. Probably already has your whole life story figured out and is planning to set you up with every single woman in the county." Sophia grinned at his alarmed expression. "Welcome to small-town Montana, where everyone knows your business before you do." She hesitated, then added, "I'm driving to Bozeman tomorrow to deliver those paintings. If you're not rushing back to Dubai, you could come along. The drive is beautiful this time of year, and I could show you more of what inspires my work." Tariq knew he should decline. He had meetings scheduled, calls to make, an empire to run, but the thought of spending more time with this young woman who saw loneliness as something to paint rather than hide, who chose authenticity over ambition, was too appealing to resist. "What time should I be ready?" Sophia's smile was like sunrise breaking over those Montana mountains. "7, and bring warm clothes. Montana in November doesn't care how expensive your suit is." The next morning, Tariq found himself in the passenger seat of Sophia's old pickup truck, wearing jeans and a heavy jacket borrowed from Mrs. Henderson's late husband. The first time in 20 years he'd worn clothes that didn't cost a fortune. Sophia drove with easy confidence along winding roads that climbed through pine forests and opened onto breathtaking vistas. They stopped at an overlook where the valley spread below them like a painting itself, all gold and amber in the morning light. "This is Montana," Sophia said, gesturing to the endless landscape. "This is what I try to capture, not just what it looks like, but how it feels to be small and insignificant and somehow perfectly placed in the universe all at once." Tariq understood exactly what she meant. Standing there, with wind biting his face and vast sky overhead, he felt more present than he had in months, maybe years. "In the desert, we have a similar feeling," he said. "The Bedouins say the desert teaches you what matters. Water, shelter, companionship. Everything else is decoration." Sophia turned to look at him. "Is that why you're really here? Trying to figure out what matters?" The question hung between them, too honest to dismiss with a joke or deflection. Tariq found himself answering with equal honesty. "My ex-wife told me I was impossible to really know, that I kept everything important locked away behind walls she couldn't breach. At the time, I thought she was making excuses for her betrayal, but lately I've wondered if she was right. I've spent 20 years building an empire, maintaining control, never letting anyone see weakness or uncertainty. Your painting showed me something I'd forgotten, that vulnerability isn't weakness, that there's strength in acknowledging loneliness rather than denying it." Sophia leaned against the truck, her expression thoughtful. "My mom used to say that we're all just trying to find people who speak our language, whatever that language is. For some people it's words, for others it's music or art or silence. When you find someone who understands your particular language, you hold on to them." She paused. "I think that's what good art does. It speaks a language that connects strangers, makes us feel less alone even when we're apart." In Bozeman, they delivered the paintings to a gallery whose owner greeted Sophia with genuine warmth and eyed Tariq with barely concealed curiosity. After the business was complete, Sophia took him to lunch at a small cafe that served elk burgers and locally brewed beer. "So what happens now?" she asked directly. "You fly back to Dubai, buy more art from safer sources, maybe get a therapist to talk about your walls." Tariq appreciated her directness, so different from the careful politeness of his Usual world. I don't know, he admitted. For the first time in years, I don't have a plan, and that's both terrifying and oddly liberating. Sophia studied him over her beer. Can I be honest with you? He nodded. I think you're at a crossroads, trying to figure out who you want to be in the next chapter of your life. And I think you came to Montana hoping to find answers. But here's the thing about crossroads. You have to choose a direction, and you have to do it for yourself, not because someone painted a picture that resonated with you. The drive back to Meadowbrook was quieter, both of them lost in thought. As they passed through small towns with evocative names, Three Forks, Manhattan, Wilsall, Tariq found himself imagining a different life, one where he wasn't constantly flying between cities, making decisions that affected thousands of employees, maintaining an image of success that felt increasingly hollow. What would it be like to wake up in a place like this, where people knew your name and checked on you during hard winters, where success was measured in authentic work rather than accumulated wealth? It was a fantasy, of course. He had responsibilities, obligations, a company to run. But the fantasy persisted, growing stronger with each mile. That evening, Sophia invited him to dinner at her small house, a modest bungalow filled with art supplies and half-finished canvases. She cooked simple food, pasta with homemade sauce, salad from her nearly finished garden, bread from the local bakery. It was the best meal Tariq had eaten in months, not because of the food itself, but because of the company, the conversation, the feeling of being in a real home rather than a showpiece penthouse. Over dinner, they shared more of their stories. Tariq told her about growing up as the youngest son in a prominent Riyadh family, the pressure to prove himself, building his first successful business venture at 22, the arranged marriage that everyone assured him would grow into love, but never quite did. Sophia shared memories of her mother, a woman who'd cleaned houses and waitressed to give her daughter opportunities, who'd encouraged Sophia's art even when practical people suggested she study something more marketable, who died of cancer at 58, having never seen her daughter's success, but having always believed in it. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman, Tariq said softly. She was. Sophia agreed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She taught me that the only thing we really leave behind is how we made people feel. All the art I create, all the success I might achieve, it's secondary to whether I lived authentically and treated people with kindness. It was a philosophy so different from the cutthroat business world Tariq inhabited that he felt something shift inside him, a recognition of values he'd abandoned somewhere along his climb to success. After dinner, they sat on her small porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold, drinking tea and watching stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. I should tell you something, Sophia said quietly. People in town will talk about us. They probably already are. A 25-year-old woman spending time with a 40-year-old man, especially a wealthy foreign man, they'll make assumptions. Tariq turned to look at her. Does that bother you? Honestly, I'm not sure. Part of me wants to tell them it's none of their business, but I've lived here my whole life. These people matter to me. Their opinions shape my world in ways they wouldn't in a big city. She paused. Plus, there's the reality that we're from completely different worlds. You'll go back to Dubai, back to your life, and this will be a nice memory of a weird weekend in Montana. That's okay. I'm not expecting anything more, but I want to be honest about what's real and what's fantasy. Her honesty was refreshing and painful. At the same time, Tariq recognized the truth in her words, but also felt resistance to accepting them. What if I don't want this to be just a memory? The question surprised them both. Sophia looked at him carefully, searching his face in the dim porch light. Then I'd say you need to think very carefully about what you're suggesting, because from where I'm sitting, you're a man in transition, figuring out who you want to be. And I've worked too hard to build a life I love to become. Someone's experiment in authenticity or escape plan from a hollow existence. Her words should have stung, but instead, Tariq felt nothing but respect for her clarity. You're right, he said. I don't have the right to disrupt your life because I'm having some kind of midlife crisis. I apologize if I've been selfish. Sophia reached over and took his hand, a simple gesture that sent warmth through him. I didn't say I wasn't interested. I said you need to be sure what you want. Because if we pursue this, whatever this is, it won't be easy. Cultural differences, age differences, lifestyle differences. We'd be swimming against strong currents. Tariq looked up at the stars, feeling the cold Montana air on his face, Sophia's warm hand in his. In Arab culture, we have a saying, the dogs bark, but the caravan moves on. It means don't let critics stop you from your journey. Maybe we're supposed to be each other's journey. Tariq extended his stay in Meadowbrook by another 3 days, much to his assistant's bewilderment. He spent his mornings working from the B&B's small parlor, conference calls about Tokyo investments and European acquisitions conducted while looking out at mountains instead of skyscrapers. His afternoons belonged to Sophia. She showed him her process, letting him watch as she worked on a new commission, explaining how she mixed colors to capture Montana's particular quality of light. She introduced him to her friends, a small circle of fellow artists, teachers, and long-time residents who regarded him with friendly curiosity rather than the deference or calculation he usually encountered. One evening, they attended a community center fundraiser where Sophia's student artwork was displayed. Tariq met the children she taught, bright-eyed kids from ranch families and struggling households who looked at their teacher with obvious adoration. Watching her interact with them, he saw a side of her that painting couldn't capture. Her patience, her ability to see potential in messy efforts, her genuine belief that everyone had creativity worth nurturing. "You're good with them," he said afterward as they walked back to her house through cold streets lit by old-fashioned lampposts. "I love teaching," Sophia replied. "Some of these kids don't have much. Their parents work multiple jobs, money's always tight, opportunities are limited, but for 2 hours a week, they get to create something from nothing, express feelings they don't have words for yet. Art saved me when I was their age. I want to give them that same lifeline." Tariq thought about his own childhood, privileged but pressured, every moment scheduled and evaluated. "Did you ever consider teaching full-time instead of trying to make it as a professional artist?" Sophia shook her head. "I need both. Teaching feeds my soul, but creating feeds my spirit. Without my own work, I'd have nothing real to teach them. They need to see that pursuing your passion is possible, not just a fantasy." Her words echoed in his mind long after they said goodnight. When had he last done something that fed his spirit rather than his ambitions? The night before he was scheduled to fly back to Dubai, Tariq took Sophia to the only upscale restaurant within 50 miles, a steakhouse in a neighboring town that required an hour's drive. Over dinner, they talked about the impossible situation they found themselves in, attracted to each other, connected in ways that defied logic, but separated by geography, culture, and life circumstances that couldn't be easily reconciled. "I could commission you to create artwork for my properties around the world," Tariq suggested. "It would give us a legitimate reason to see each other, time to figure out if this is real or just two lonely people finding comfort in each other's company." Sophia smiled sadly. "And when people ask how we met, how we built a relationship, what do we say? Oh, he bought my painting, then flew to Montana on a whim, and we're trying to force compatibility through work arrangements. That's not a foundation for anything lasting, Tariq." He knew she was right, but the thought of flying back to Dubai tomorrow and never seeing her again felt unbearable. "Then what do we do?" Sophia reached across the table and took both his hands in hers. "We're honest about what this is. A beautiful, unexpected connection that showed us both we're capable of feeling something real. We don't make promises we can't keep or plans that don't fit our actual lives." The conversation grew more intense as they drove back toward Meadowbrook. "So we just say goodbye and move on?" Tariq's voice was rough with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. "Is that what you want?" "Of course it's not what I want," Sophia replied, her own voice unsteady. "But I'm 25 years old, Tariq. I've built a life here that matters to me. My students need me. My friends are here. This landscape inspires everything I create. I can't just abandon all that to follow some man I've known for a week, no matter how strongly I feel about him. I haven't asked you to abandon anything." "No, but what's the alternative? A long-distance relationship where you fly in once a month between business trips, me visiting you in Dubai where I'd be completely out of my element, not speaking the language, not understanding the culture. That's not sustainable, and we both know it. She pulled the truck to the side of the road, unable to drive while crying. Tariq reached for her, and she came into his arms awkwardly across the truck's center console. They held each other in the darkness, both of them grieving. Something that hadn't really begun yet was already ending. "What if I stayed?" The words came out before Tariq fully thought them through. Sophia pulled back to look at him. "Stayed? In Meadowbrook? Not permanently, not right away, but what if I rented a place here for a few months? I can work remotely. I've proved that this week. My company has capable executives who can handle day-to-day operations. This isn't about running away from my responsibilities. It's about figuring out what I actually want my life to look like. And I can't do that from a Dubai penthouse where everything reinforces the old patterns." Sophia searched his face. "That's a big decision to make, based on a week's acquaintance with someone half your age. It's not just about you," Tariq said, though he knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about this place, this pace of life. It's about waking up and feeling something beyond obligation for the first time in years. Give me 3 months. If it's a mistake, I'll know by then and can return to my old life. If it's not," he paused, "if it's not, maybe we'll have built something real enough to figure out the next steps together." The idea was crazy, impractical, completely unlike anything Tariq had ever done, which was exactly why it felt right. They talked for another hour, Sophia playing devil's advocate, pointing out every logical reason this was a terrible idea, while Tariq countered with all the ways he could make it work. Finally, she smiled through her tears. "You're really serious about this, aren't you? You'd actually stay in Meadowbrook, Montana, population 3,000, where the most exciting Friday night activity is high school football, and the grocery store closes at 8? "I'd try," Tariq said simply. "For the first time in my adult life, I'd try something without calculating ROI or exit strategies. I'd try just being, instead of always becoming." Sophia kissed him then, softly at first, then with an intensity that contained all the emotion of the past week, the loneliness that had brought them together, the connection they discovered, the fear and hope of what might come next, when they finally broke apart. Both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. 3 months, she whispered. "Let's see what 3 months can teach us." The next morning, instead of boarding his private jet back to Dubai, Tariq met with Mrs. Henderson about renting the Rustling Pines B&B on a monthly basis. The elderly woman's eyes twinkled with matchmaking satisfaction as she quoted him a rate that was probably more than fair. By noon, his assistant had rearranged his schedule, setting up secure communication, lines and shipping necessary equipment to Montana. His executive team, accustomed to his decisive leadership, was initially alarmed but quickly adapted when Tariq made it clear this wasn't a vacation, but a working arrangement that would continue to deliver results. His mother's reaction was more complicated. "Montana," she repeated in Arabic, her confusion evident even across continents. "Habibi, I don't understand. You have properties in London, Paris, New York. Why would you choose to live in a place no one has heard of?" Tariq tried to explain about needing space to think, to re-evaluate his life, but he could tell his mother heard this as another sign of the depression that had worried her since the divorce. "Is this about a woman?" she asked shrewdly. "Partly," he admitted, "but more about me, about figuring out who I am beyond the roles I've been playing." Sophia, for her part, maintained her boundaries even as they began officially dating. She had her routine and wasn't about to disrupt it, she told him firmly. She painted in the mornings, taught her classes twice a week, had dinner with friends regularly. Tariq could be part of her life, but he couldn't be her whole life. She'd seen too many women lose themselves in relationships, and she'd worked too hard for her independence to surrender it now. Tariq respected this, even admired it, though it meant learning patience he hadn't needed to exercise before. In his business world, he was accustomed to getting what he wanted when he wanted it. Sophia operated on different principles entirely. "You can't buy time or authenticity," she told him when he tried to plan too much too fast. "This works at its own pace or not at all." So he learned to slow down, to exist in the present rather than always strategizing 3 moves ahead. They fell into a pattern: coffee at Rita's diner most mornings, Tariq working from the B&B while Sophia painted in her studio, dinners at her house or occasionally at the diner, long walks through the cold evenings, discussing everything from art to religion to politics. Their relationship deepened naturally, like water finding its path through landscape. Tariq discovered he enjoyed the simplicity of Montana life, chopping wood for Sophia's fireplace, helping her winterize her garden, learning to appreciate the particular quality of silence that only exists in spaces between mountains. He started running in the mornings, something he hadn't done since university, his breath creating clouds in the frigid air as he traced routes through town and along rural roads. People in Meadowbrook gradually accepted his presence, though he knew he was the subject of endless speculation. That Bennett girl's foreign boyfriend is how he heard himself described once at the hardware store, where he'd gone to buy supplies for fixing Sophia's loose porch railing. The term boyfriend had startled him. At 40, he'd thought he was beyond such labels, but it also pleased him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. He was someone's boyfriend, not someone's investment opportunity or social connection or exit strategy from a marriage that should never have happened. Just Sophia's boyfriend, spending his Saturday afternoon fixing her porch because it needed fixing and because he wanted to do something useful with his hands. Thanksgiving arrived, a holiday Tariq had never properly celebrated despite his years doing business in America. Sophia invited him to spend it with her extended circle of friends, a potluck dinner at the community center, where everyone brought dishes and stories and warmth against the November cold. Tariq contributed by hiring a catering company from Bozeman to prepare traditional Arab dishes, wanting to share something of his culture with people who'd welcomed him so generously. The room filled with the mingled scents of turkey and lamb, of familiar American sides and unfamiliar Middle Eastern spices. People tried his contributions with adventurous appetites and genuine curiosity, asking questions about ingredients and traditions. He found himself explaining about Eid celebrations, about dates and cardamom coffee, about hospitality traditions that paralleled Montana's own values of neighbor helping neighbor. By evening's end, he felt less like a foreign curiosity and more like an accepted member of this tight-knit community. One cold December afternoon, Sophia's old pickup truck refused to start, stranding her at her studio. Tariq arrived to help, popping the hood and looking at the engine with the limited mechanical knowledge he'd retained from his youth when his father insisted all his sons understand how things worked. "I could buy you a new truck," he offered, not for the first time. Sophia gave him the look she'd perfected over the past month, the one that said, "We've discussed this, or you could help me fix this one. This truck belonged to my mom. I'm not replacing it just because it needs work." So they stood in the cold, watching tutorial videos on Tariq's phone, trying to diagnose the problem. When it turned out to be beyond their skills, Sophia called a local mechanic who arrived within 20 minutes and had them running again within an hour. "That's what I love about this place," Sophia said as they drove home. "In Dubai or New York, you'd wait days for an appointment, deal with service departments and paperwork. Here, Earl comes over, fixes your truck, refuses to charge full price because he knew your mom, and invites you to his granddaughter's Christmas recital." The first real test came when Tariq's business partner in Dubai insisted he needed to return for crucial meetings with Saudi investors. The trip would take at least a week, possibly 2. Sophia drove him to the airport, both of them quiet with the weight of temporary separation. "This is the reality," she said, as they sat in the departures area. "You have a life beyond Montana, responsibilities that matter." I knew that going in, but Tariq could hear the vulnerability beneath her practical words. "I'll be back," he promised. "This isn't me leaving. It's me handling obligations so I can come back." The week in Dubai felt surreal after his months in Montana. His penthouse seemed sterile and cold, the constant noise of the city overwhelming after Meadowbrook's quiet. His meetings were successful. The Saudi investors committed to his renewable energy projects. His company reported record quarterly profits, but none of it gave him the satisfaction it once would have. He found himself checking his phone constantly for Sophia's messages, calculating time zone differences so he could video call her when she wasn't working or sleeping. "You look different," his brother commented over dinner in Riyadh, where Tariq had gone to visit family. calmer, maybe. Less. Like you're wound too tight, Tariq laughed. Montana living. Turns out fewer meetings and more open spaces does wonders for stress levels. His brother studied him seriously. Is it really the place? Or is it the woman? Mother mentioned you're seeing someone? An artist? The family grapevine had been busy, apparently. Both, Tariq admitted. She's extraordinary, Khalid. Talented, authentic, completely unimpressed by wealth or status. She lives in this tiny town where everyone knows everyone, and she's building a career on her own terms, teaching kids art because she believes in giving back. His brother raised an eyebrow. And how old is this paragon? 25. Khalid was quiet for a moment. That's quite an age gap, Aki. What do you have in common, besides her not caring about your money? It was a fair question. We understand loneliness, Tariq said. We both know what it's like to lose something important and have to rebuild yourself afterward. We value authenticity over appearance, and she makes me want to be a better version of myself, not just more successful or wealthy, but actually better, kinder, more present, more real. His mother's concerns were more pointed. She arranged a private tea, just the two of them in her elegant Riyadh home. Tariq, Habibi, you know I want you to be happy. After Layla, I've prayed every day for you to find peace. But this girl, woman, Tariq corrected gently, this woman from Montana, she's so young. What happens when you want to settle down, have children perhaps? She's at an age where she should be exploring her career, not ready to build a family. Mama, she is building her career, successfully, and we haven't discussed children. We're taking this one day at a time. His mother set down her teacup with a delicate clink. But that's the problem, isn't it? You're 40 years old, established in your life and career. You've been married before. You know what you want. She's still figuring out who she is. The foundation is unequal. Tariq couldn't deny the truth in his mother's words, but he also knew that what he and Sophia had transcended conventional calculations. Perhaps you're right, Mama. Perhaps it won't work. But for the first time since the divorce, I feel alive rather than just functional. That has to mean something. The conversation with his mother haunted him on the flight back to Montana. Was he being selfish, pursuing his own healing at the potential cost of Sophia's development and future? She was 25. She should be free to explore, to make mistakes, to build her life without the complication of a relationship with a man 15 years older who came with international business obligations and cultural complexities. But when he finally walked into Rita's diner, where Sophia was waiting for him, when he saw her face light up and felt her arms around him, all his doubts evaporated like morning mist in Montana. Sunshine, I missed you, she whispered into his shoulder, and he knew with bone-deep certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, this woman was worth fighting for. They spent the afternoon at her house, reconnecting over coffee and shared stories from their time apart. Sophia showed him the progress on her current commission piece, a winter landscape that captured Montana's stark beauty. Tariq told her about his meetings, about his family's concerns, about feeling like he was living two separate lives. Maybe that's the problem, Sophia said thoughtfully, curled up beside him on her worn couch. You're trying to keep these worlds separate, Dubai Tariq and Montana Tariq, but you can't live divided forever. At some point, you have to integrate these parts of yourself, or you'll tear yourself apart. Her insight was uncomfortably accurate. How do you propose I do that? I don't know, she admitted. But I think it starts with being honest about what you really want. Not what your family expects, not what makes business sense, not what's convenient or practical. What do you actually want your life to look like 5 years from now? It was a question Tariq had been avoiding. I want to wake up next to someone who knows me, really knows me, and loves me anyway. I want work that matters beyond profit margins. I want to be part of a community, rather than always being an outsider. He paused. I want to matter to people in real ways, not just as a business connection or wealthy patron. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. That's beautiful, Tariq, and scary, because it means potentially giving up a lot of what you've spent your life building. Christmas approached, and with it came an invitation that would test their relationship in new ways. Sophia's closest friends were hosting their annual holiday party, a significant social event in Meadowbrook's calendar. "Everyone will be watching us," she warned him, "making judgments, speculating about our future, probably taking bets on how long this lasts. Small-town politics can be brutal in their own way." Tariq had faced boardrooms full of hostile investors and negotiated with politicians from authoritarian regimes. But the thought of being scrutinized by Meadowbrook's residents made him nervous in a different way. These weren't people he could impress with business acumen or buy off with charitable donations. They were Sophia's people, and their opinion of him mattered because it affected her. The party was held in a beautifully decorated farmhouse outside town, string lights and evergreen garlands creating magical warmth against winter darkness. Tariq arrived with Sophia, both of them dressed for the occasion, her in a simple green dress that made her eyes luminous, him in casual clothes that still somehow screamed expensive despite his efforts at Montana-appropriate attire. The evening went better than he'd feared. People asked him questions about Dubai with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. When someone made a comment about their age difference, Sophia's best friend Sarah immediately deflected with a story about her own grandparents, who'd been 17 years apart and happily married for 53 years until Grandpa passed. "Age is just a number when you find your person," Sarah said firmly, and several heads nodded in agreement. By evening's end, as Tariq helped clean up, while Sophia said her goodbyes, Sarah's husband Mark approached him. "You're good for her," he said without preamble. "Sophia's been kind of stuck since her mom died, playing it safe, not letting herself really connect with anyone. You've brought something back to life in her. Just don't break her heart, yeah? Because if you do, you'll have the entire town to answer to." It was both a warning and an endorsement. "I have no intention of hurting her," Tariq replied seriously, "but I appreciate you caring enough to warn me off if I did." Mark grinned. "That's Montana for you. We take care of our own." The new year brought both clarity and complexity. Tariq's 3-month commitment to Montana was ending, and decisions needed to be made. His executive team had managed well in his extended absence, but there were projects requiring his direct involvement. Investors who wanted face-to-face meetings, opportunities that wouldn't wait indefinitely. Sophia, meanwhile, had received an invitation to exhibit her work at a prestigious gallery in San Francisco, a significant career milestone that would require her presence for several weeks. They sat in her living room on a January evening, winter wind howling outside, facing the reality they'd been avoiding. "I don't want to lose what we've built," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "But I also won't ask you to give up your life for me, and I can't give up mine for you. We're at different stages, Tariq. You've already built your empire. I'm still building mine, and I need to do that on my own terms." Tariq took her hand. "So what are we saying? That 3 months was beautiful but unsustainable? That we go back to our separate lives and treasure the memory?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying I love you, which terrifies me because I've never felt this way about anyone. But I'm also saying I can't be the reason you abandon everything you've worked for, and you can't be the reason I compromise my career or my independence." The following week brought an unexpected opportunity that would change everything. Tariq received a call from an old university friend, now working in renewable energy policy. "I heard you're spending time in Montana," Ahmed said. "Interesting coincidence. We're looking to establish a North American headquarters for our wind and solar initiatives. Montana's positioning itself as a renewable energy leader, great incentives for green tech companies. Any chance you'd be interested in heading up that division? It would mean relocating to the States, probably to Montana, given the state partnerships we're building." Tariq's heart rate accelerated. "Tell me more." Over the next hour, Ahmed laid out a vision that aligned perfectly with Tariq's evolving values, meaningful work that addressed climate change, an opportunity to build something from the ground up again, a legitimate reason to establish roots in Montana without it being solely about a relationship. "I'd need to discuss this with my board, restructure some holdings, but yes, I'm very interested. Let me do some research and get back to you by month's end." After hanging up, Tariq sat in his rented room at the B&B, mind racing with possibilities. This could be the integration Sophia had talked about, combining his business acumen with authentic purpose, his resources with roots. He waited until he'd done thorough research before telling Sophia, wanting to present a real possibility rather than a fantasy. When he finally shared the opportunity over dinner at her house, she listened with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That's incredible," she said when he finished. "It's exactly the kind of work you should be doing, using your expertise to make real impact." "But," Tariq prompted, hearing what she hadn't said, "but I need you to be honest with me and with yourself. Is this truly about the work, about renewable energy and building something meaningful? Or is it about having a reason to stay near me without admitting you're making a life decision based on a relationship?" It was a fair question, one Tariq had asked himself repeatedly. "Both," he answered honestly. "Yes, you're part of the equation. Meeting you, spending time in Montana, it's shown me possibilities I hadn't considered. But Ahmed's right. This is meaningful work I'm qualified to do, and Montana is strategically positioned for renewable energy development. Even if you and I didn't work out romantically, I'd still want to pursue this opportunity." Sophia studied him carefully. "Okay, then I support it, as long as you're sure you're not sacrificing too much of your established life. What about your company in Dubai?" Tariq had thought this through carefully. "I'd transition to chairman of the board, step back from day-to-day operations. I have excellent people in place who are ready for more responsibility. My brother Khalid is interested in taking on a larger operational role. It's time for the next generation to lead." Over the following weeks, Tariq negotiated the terms of his involvement with the renewable energy project while restructuring his business holdings. It was complex, requiring careful navigation of investor concerns and family dynamics. His mother was surprisingly supportive once she understood this wasn't about running away, but about building something new. "Your father always said that a man has several lives if he's wise enough to recognize when one chapter ends and another begins," she told him. "Perhaps this is your new chapter, Habibi." His brother Khalid was equally enthusiastic about taking on expanded leadership, having chafed for years in Tariq's shadow. The transition would take time, at least 6 months of intensive handover and adjustment, but it was doable. Tariq found himself energized by the challenge, in ways he hadn't been in years, not just maintaining an empire, but building something with purpose. In February, Sophia traveled to San Francisco for her gallery exhibition, while Tariq shuttled between Montana, Dubai, and Washington, D.C. for meetings with energy officials. They maintained connection through video calls and text messages, but the physical distance reminded them both of how hard this would be. During one particularly late-night call, Sophia looked exhausted and vulnerable. "I miss you," she admitted. "I miss Montana. This city is exciting, and the exhibition is going well, but it's not home." "Come back then," Tariq said. "You've done what you needed to do there. The gallery interest proves your work has broader appeal than just Montana collectors, but you don't have to stay in San Francisco to have a successful career." She smiled tiredly. "Says the man who's probably calling me from some luxury hotel suite. Mrs. Henderson's guest room. Actually, I'm back in Meadowbrook for the week, finalizing some renewable energy site surveys." Sophia's expression shifted. "You're in Meadowbrook? At the B&B? Where else would I stay when I'm here?" Tariq replied, confused by her reaction. "This is home base now, even if I'm traveling frequently for work." That weekend, when Sophia returned to Montana, she found Tariq had bought a house. Not a mansion, not a statement property, but a modest craftsman bungalow 3 blocks from her own place, a house that needed work but had good bones, and a workshop perfect for an art studio. "I thought you might need more space," he explained as he showed her around the empty rooms. "Your current house is perfect for you, but if we're going to build a life together, we need room for both of us. This could be our space, with studios for both your art and my home office, guest rooms for visiting family, a proper kitchen for when my mother insists on flying over to teach you Arab. Cooking." Sophia walked through the house slowly, touching walls, looking out windows at mountain views. "You bought a house," she said wonderingly. in Meadowbrook, Montana. You, who owns property in half the world's major cities. The other properties are investments, Tariq said simply. This is a home. There's a difference. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I love you. I've been trying not to say it too much, trying to protect myself, but I love you. Completely, and it terrifies me how much. Tariq crossed the room and took her in his arms. I love you too. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, we have obstacles to overcome. Cultural differences, family expectations, logistics of building a life that honors both our needs. But Sophia, I've spent my entire adult life making calculated decisions, weighing risks against potential returns, protecting myself against vulnerability. With you, I want to take the risk. I want to be vulnerable. I want to build something real, even knowing it might be messy and complicated and occasionally difficult. They stood in the empty house that would become their home, holding each other as winter light slanted through uncurtained windows. Outside, Montana stretched in every direction, vast, honest, full of possibility. We'll have to navigate the age thing, Sophia said against his shoulder, and the cultural differences. Your family will probably never fully approve. Small town. Busybodies will gossip. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Tariq replied, but we'll figure it out together. That's what partnership means. Facing challenges as a team rather than as separate individuals trying to make incompatible lives work. The spring brought transformation. Tariq's renewable energy division established its headquarters in Billings, about 2 hours from Meadowbrook, with satellite offices and project sites throughout Montana. He hired locally when possible, bringing good jobs to rural communities while developing solar and wind farms that would help power the state's future. His work took him away regularly, meetings in D.C., site visits across the region, occasional trips to Dubai, but he always came home to Meadowbrook, to the house he and Sophia were gradually renovating, to the life they were building together. Sophia's career flourished as well. The San Francisco exhibition led to representation by a major gallery, commissions from international collectors, and teaching opportunities at regional universities. But she maintained her twice-weekly classes at the Meadowbrook Community Center and her small studio above the pharmacy, insisting that success meant nothing if she lost connection to the place and people who'd shaped her. They found their rhythm, independent but intertwined, supporting each other's work while maintaining their individual identities. In May, Tariq's mother and brother visited Montana, a trip that required careful cultural navigation. Tariq arranged for them to stay at a hotel in Billings, knowing Mrs. Henderson's B&B, charming as it was, wouldn't meet his mother's standards for hospitality. He'd warned Sophia extensively about Arab customs, about the importance of family approval, about how his mother would evaluate everything from her clothing to her home to her career choices. She needs to know you'll be a good wife eventually, that you understand the importance of family, that you can navigate both our worlds, he'd explained. Sophia had been nervous but determined. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not, Tariq. If your mother can't accept me as I am, then we have a bigger problem than cultural differences. The first dinner was strained, despite Tariq's best efforts to facilitate conversation. His mother, Amira, was polite but reserved, her English perfect, but her manner distant. She studied Sophia with sharp eyes, noting every detail. Khalid was friendlier, but clearly uncertain how to interact with his brother's much younger American girlfriend. The breakthrough came the next day when Sophia took Amira to her studio, something Tariq hadn't expected. She showed his mother her paintings, explaining her process, discussing the inspiration behind each piece. Amira, it turned out, had been an accomplished calligrapher in her youth before marriage, and motherhood claimed her time. The two women connected over art and craftsmanship, over the discipline required to master technique while maintaining creative spirit. Your son bought this painting, Sophia said, showing Amira a photograph of Montana solitude, the piece that had started everything. It spoke to him during a difficult time. Art has a way of connecting people across distances and differences, don't you think? Amira looked at her son with new understanding. He told me about the painting, but I didn't understand why it mattered so much. Now I see, she turned to Sophia. You are very talented and very honest in your work. This is rare. It wasn't approval, not exactly, but it was a beginning. Over the following days, as Amira and Khalid toured the renewable energy sites and saw Tariq's new life firsthand, something shifted. His mother saw him relaxed in ways he'd never been in Dubai, engaged with his work on a meaningful level, part of a community rather than isolated by wealth. The final evening of their visit, Amira asked to speak with Tariq privately. They walked through Meadowbrook's quiet streets as the sun set, mother and son navigating complex territory. "She makes you happy," Amira said in Arabic. "This I can see clearly, and she is not using you for money or status, also clear. But Tariq, Habibi, you must think about the future. She is very young. What happens when you want children and she is not ready? What happens when she is 40 and you are 55? These are not small things." Tariq had thought about these questions extensively. "I don't know, Mama. None of us knows what the future holds. All I know is that I'd rather face an uncertain future with Sophia than a certain one without her. Life gives us so few chances at real connection. When you find it, you hold on, even knowing it might be complicated." His mother was quiet for several steps. "Your father and I had an arranged marriage. We grew to love each other, but it took years. What you have with this girl, this woman, is different, more immediate, more intense. Perhaps it will burn too bright and consume itself. Or perhaps," she paused, "perhaps you have found something rare and precious. I pray it is the latter." Before leaving, Amira gave Sophia a gift, a delicate gold bracelet that had belonged to Tariq's grandmother. "In our family, this passes to important women," she explained. "I wore it. My mother-in-law wore it before me. If you and Tariq have a daughter someday, she will wear it too." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she understood the significance. "Thank you. I'll treasure it, and I'll do my best to honor your family and your culture while being true to my own." Amira nodded approvingly. "This is all anyone can ask, that you try, that you respect what matters to him even as he respects what matters to you." After his family left, Tariq and Sophia lay in bed in their renovated house, processing the visit. "She gave you grandmother's bracelet," Tariq said wonderingly. That's huge, Sophia. That's essentially her blessing." "She's a remarkable woman," Sophia replied. "I can see where you get your strength and dignity, and your brother is great. He promised to visit again soon, maybe bring his wife next time." They talked late into the night about family and future, about the life they were building together, despite all the logical reasons it shouldn't work. By summer, their relationship had found its sustainable rhythm. Tariq traveled regularly for work, but always returned to Meadowbrook, to the house that felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever lived. Sophia's studio above the pharmacy expanded, and she hired an assistant to help manage the increasing demand for her work. They hosted dinner parties that blended their worlds. Tariq's business associates meeting Sophia's artist friends, Arab food served alongside Montana beef, conversations flowing between English and Arabic as Sophia gradually learned basic phrases in his language. The town had fully accepted Tariq now. He was Sophia's Tariq, or that renewable energy guy, depending on who you asked, known for his generous contributions to local causes and his willingness to roll up his sleeves and work alongside others. When the community center needed renovation, he donated funds, but also spent weekends helping with construction. When a family lost their home to fire, he organized a fundraiser that brought together his international contacts and local volunteers. He'd found his place in this small Montana town, this unlikely home. On an August evening, Tariq took Sophia to the spot where she'd painted Montana Solitude, the barn and endless sky that had first connected them. He'd arranged for a catered dinner to be set up there, white linens and candles incongruous against the rural setting, but somehow perfect. They ate as the sun set, painting the sky in colors no artist could quite capture. "You know what I love about this place," Tariq said, gesturing to the landscape around them. "It doesn't care who I am or what I've accomplished. I could be a billionaire or a ranch hand, and this sky would be just as infinite, just as beautiful. There's freedom in that insignificance." Sophia smiled. "That's what I tried to capture in the painting, how small we are, and how perfect that smallness is. We don't have to be everything, we just have to be present. Tariq reached into his pocket, his heart pounding. Sophia Bennett, you've taught me more about living authentically in the past 9 months than I learned in my previous 40 years. You've shown me that home isn't a place or a building. It's wherever you choose to be fully yourself with someone who sees and loves you completely. He opened the small box, revealing a ring he'd had custom made. Simple gold band with a single perfect stone. Elegant, but not ostentatious. I know we're from different worlds, different cultures, different generations. I know people will have opinions and judgments. I know we'll face challenges that might defeat us. But I also know that I want to face all of it with you. Will you marry me? Sophia's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. For a moment that felt eternal. She didn't speak, and Tariq felt every second like a heartbeat. Then she launched herself at him, nearly knocking them both over, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes, yes, of course, yes. They held each other as the Montana sky darkened and stars began to emerge, the same stars that had watched over Sophia's lonely nights after her mother's death, over Tariq's hollow success in Dubai, over the unlikely connection that had brought them together. People are going to say, I'm too young, Sophia whispered. They'll say you're too old, that we're moving too fast, that it won't last. Let them talk, Tariq replied. We'll prove them wrong by building something real day by day, choice by choice. That's how any worthwhile relationship works. Not grand gestures, but consistent presence and genuine partnership. The engagement announcement caused quite a stir in both their worlds. In Meadowbrook, it was the social event of the year, celebrated with genuine warmth by people who'd watched their relationship develop. In Dubai, Tariq's decision to marry an American artist half his age raised eyebrows, but his mother's approval smoothed much of the family concern. Sophia's friends threw her an engagement party at the community center, while Tariq's business associates hosted a sophisticated affair in Billings. They navigated both events with the same philosophy they brought to everything, honoring their different worlds while remaining authentic to themselves. Planning the wedding became an exercise in cultural bridge building. They decided on 2 ceremonies, a small traditional Muslim ceremony in Dubai for Tariq's family, followed by a larger celebration in Meadowbrook that would blend both their traditions. Sophia studied Islamic marriage customs with the same dedication she'd brought to learning Arabic, determined to honor Tariq's heritage while maintaining her own identity. Tariq, meanwhile, worked with Meadowbrook's community to understand local wedding traditions, wanting Sophia to have the celebration her mother would have wanted for her. In October, under the same Montana sky that had witnessed their first connection, Tariq Al-Rashid and Sophia Bennett were married. The ceremony took place at the site where he'd proposed, the barn and infinite horizon serving as their cathedral. A Muslim sheikh from Billings officiated, incorporating both Islamic traditions and American customs in a way that honored both their backgrounds. Tariq's mother stood beside them, elegant in traditional dress, her approval now unqualified. Friends from Meadowbrook mixed with family. From Riyadh, artists from both coasts mingled with energy executives, all of them united by genuine affection for the couple. Rita from the diner catered, serving both her famous pie and traditional Arab sweets. Sophia wore a dress she'd designed herself, simple, elegant, with subtle embroidery, incorporating both Western and Middle Eastern patterns. Tariq wore a traditional thobe for the ceremony, later changing into a Western suit for the reception, symbolizing the blending of their lives. As they exchanged vows, Sophia's voice was strong and clear. I promise to honor your culture while remaining true to my own, to support your dreams while pursuing mine, to love you in the present rather than worrying about our different pasts or uncertain future. Tariq's vows were equally heartfelt. I promise to see you as you are, not as I want you to be, to give you space to grow and change, knowing that we'll do it together, to bring my whole self to this marriage. The Arab, man raised with traditional values, and the global citizen who's learned to adapt, the businessman, and the man who's learning to simply be. You've taught me that love isn't about finding someone to complete you, but about being complete yourself, and choosing to share that completeness with another whole person. person. There wasn't a dry eye among the guests as they sealed their vows with a kiss, the Montana wind carrying their joy across the landscape. The reception lasted into the night. Traditional dabke dancing mixing with country two-step, conversations flowing between languages and cultures, laughter echoing under the stars. Later, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Tariq pulled Sophia close. "Thank you," he whispered, "for taking a chance on a lonely 40-year-old billionaire who showed up unexpectedly in your small town." Sophia smiled up at him. "Thank you for seeing past my age and inexperience to the person I actually am, for building a life that honors both our truths." As the celebration continued around them, they stepped away briefly, walking to the edge of the property where the land dropped away to reveal miles of Montana landscape under moonlight. "What are you thinking?" Sophia asked, leaning into his warmth against the October cold. "I'm thinking about the painting that started this," Tariq replied, "about loneliness and solitude and the difference between them. I was alone in Dubai, surrounded by people but completely isolated. Here, with you, I've learned that solitude can be powerful when you choose it rather than when it chooses you. And that loneliness disappears when you find someone who speaks your particular language." Sophia squeezed his hand. "We're going to have challenges ahead. Difficult conversations about if and when to have children, negotiations about how much time to spend in different places, moments when our different backgrounds create conflict rather than complement each other." "I know," Tariq said, "and we'll handle them together with honesty and patience and love. That's what marriage means, choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the night sky over Montana, two people from impossibly different worlds who'd found unexpected common ground. Behind them, the party continued, their families and friends celebrating not just a wedding, but a testament to the possibility of bridge building, of love transcending boundaries, of taking risks on authentic connection. Tariq thought about the lonely man he'd been less than a year ago, standing in his Dubai penthouse contemplating an empty future. That man couldn't have imagined this, standing on Montana land he partly owned, married to an extraordinary young woman who taught him to live rather than just exist, surrounded by genuine community rather than superficial connections. Life had surprised him with grace he hadn't known to seek. "Ready to go back to the party?" Sophia asked eventually. "They'll notice we're gone soon." "Let them notice," Tariq replied, pulling her closer. "Let them see that we chose each other against all reasonable odds and created something beautiful from that choice. That's the best gift we can give anyone, proof that unlikely love can work if you're brave enough to try." Together, they walked back toward the lights and laughter, toward the life they were building one authentic choice at a time, toward a future neither could have predicted, but both had been brave enough to embrace. The Arab billionaire who'd felt lost after divorce, and the young American artist who'd understood loneliness. They'd found each other against impossible odds, and in finding each other they'd found home.